everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. In our ongoing series of conversations with subject matter experts, we will be tracing various technological developments and trying to understand its impact on the technology industry and our customers. Globally, we are in a stage of transition to a digitally driven technology first world. We've seen the evolution of Gen AI, and while many technologies have come and gone, none have had the disruptive effect as Gen AI, and certainly not in the scale and scope that we're seeing. Gen AI is changing how work is getting done, and as a result, how our skills need to evolve to get that work done. According to the World Economic Forum's Future of Job report, around 23% of existing job roles will be transformed over the next 25 years, and almost 40% of our work hours are going to get transformed. And this applies to both the specialized fields and also routine job works. The report also suggests a framework on how to navigate this changing landscape with a focus on three fundamental principles: promoting employee awareness, facilitating organizational change, and shifting workplace norms and cultures. With this background, for today's conversation, I will focus on how technology companies are preparing their leaders and their employees to adapt to an extremely dynamic world. To explore this topic in greater depth, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Poornima Sathy, who leads global solutions for core technologies and insight service line at Cognizant. This service line includes artificial intelligence and analytics, cloud infrastructure and security, IoT and sustainability. Poornima is a global business IT professional with over 3 decades of experience in business leadership, technology solutions, sales, consulting, digital transformation, and software product development and delivery. Prior to joining Cognizant, she held an executive leadership position at a data and analytics startup. Welcome, Poornima. Wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And a very good morning to you as well. And a wonderful introduction to the hottest topic in the radar. Thanks, Diksha.
So, Poornima, to start off, you represent a global organization with over, close to 3,500 people, and you have a presence in practically every segment of the technology industry. So my first question to you is, how do you ensure that the skilling journey for employees remains adaptable and responsive to rapidly changing demands of Gen AI, right? While at the same time, you're fostering a continuous learning within the organization.
Interesting question. That is indeed a huge workforce. And the world of learning has, like everything else, has also been vastly impacted by generative AI and even a few technologies before that in the last few years. So learning has to be also, we have to also relearn how we educate and skill our associates. And now it is all about experiencing, experimenting, and evolving. There was a time when the technology was there and we used to have academies and schools and colleges actually teaching that to young students and employees. Today, it's not like that. Almost every quarter, every month, technology is changing and evolving. So what gets learned keeps changing. And the next thing is now the technology, especially AI and generative AI, is all about application of the technology rather than the technology itself, which means that our associates have to experience the technology, experience the impact of it, and more importantly, experiment with it. Right. The most important aspect about generative AI or any AI for that matter is, as much as we are learning, it also learns. So it also evolves, right? It's not a static technology. So when it comes to LLMs, when it comes to prompt engineering, it's all about understanding the world of business and the various applications of generative AI and actually experimenting. So that's why at Cognizant, if you see, more than academy, we have studios. And in these studios, we have all the tools and implements that are required for learning. And the exciting part is it's not just our employees, 350,000 associates. In addition, in this forum, we bring together our partners, we bring together our customers. Okay, so as a community, we are learning. So I would say the key words here for learning in the era of generative AI is keeping it evolving, not static, keeping it experimental, allow everybody to experiment and let their imagination contribute to the technology, and keep it experiential, right? The technology has to be experienced and not just implemented. Okay, when we used to have ERP, we used to say implement. Now I would say we'll have to experience the technology. So with these three fundamentals, the entire learning ecosystem is being developed.
Poornima, you mentioned one key point, which is to say that learning is no longer static, right?
Yes.
So that brings me to the next question, which is we are talking about a continuous learning culture, that these are times where everybody has to continuously upskill themselves, right?
Yes.
Now, for many of us, especially who have been in the workforce for, say, X number of years, unlearning, learning, and relearning can be a challenge. And often it's more of a mindset challenge, right? So, in within your organization, right, can you give me some idea about what strategies you have implemented to make this continuous learning a core habit? And how do you make this journey very exciting and adventurous for your employees?
So this might be a slightly lengthy answer, but this is at the core of learning today, right? So when about 7, 8 years back, we were re-looking at our learning strategy. So we really thought behind what could be the inhibitors to learning, right? Why do we need a mindset? That means there are some inhibitors to learning. Now, what could those be? Um, Out of the long list, if you take out 3 or 4 key ones, the first one is time. We're so busy in our day to day work that we might not have time to take out for learning. The second thing that we saw was accessibility to learning content. Okay, there are fixed programs happening in certain classrooms or in certain labs, which are in certain cities, or certain online courses. So the accessibility to learning was not keeping pace with everything else, right? So now everything is accessible for us on our mobile, but learning was not. And the third thing we saw was the relevance of the content. Because technology is evolving so fast, many times the content in the learning was a little dated or it was too complex or complicated, so people couldn't absorb it. And the last and definitely not the least is what is the motivation for learning? Okay, other than the fact that without learning, we might not be that relevant to our jobs, what else is the motivation? So, when we approach learning from solving all of these challenges, we see that the impact of it is continuous learning automatically happens. Now, if you take about time, right? So, what we have made learning about is mostly it's learning about in your own pace, right? You can learn. The content is online. It's accessible from your mobile device. It's in small podcasts, so you can listen to it while you are, getting driven to work or at any point in time. So we have made this entire learning. What do you say? Sensitive to the time availability of our associates. The second, of course, is access. It's important to keep learning all around us, right? It just can't be a classroom or an online course, right? There are hackathons, then there are flipped classrooms, then there are brown bag lunches, and then there are project learning hours. So, I mean, when everybody is in projects, we say that, say, Thursday is when we do our learning for 1 hour. All of us come together and share experience. So, from various formats, right, we ensure that learning happens. We spend an hour at least in our week for learning. Then we have learning programs for leaders and senior employees, right? The program is designed such that they might not need to go into the syntaxes, and we might not have them writing a PySpark code, for example, but they might need to know the concepts such that they can have conversations with partners or clients. So we created programs for leadership which are quite different from what we would for our programmers. So from that point of view, the accessibility and the time were taken care of. The third thing about relevance is one important thing we did. Other than the academy developed course content, we continuously create course content with our partners. And if that is not enough, we have these huge tech communities. So subject matter experts from our own organization keep refining the material. So our learnings from actual projects, actual work we're executing gets back into it. So from that perspective, it gets very relevant. Last is the most important. What is my motivation? So most of the time what happens is we learn a particular technology, but the project we work on is something else. So by the time we come to a project where we learned, we might have forgotten some. So what we've actually done is we have this in Cognizant, we have a standard platform. It's a flagship program for innovation called Bluebolt. So in that, what we have done is in the project that you're doing, in the technology that you're doing, whatever is your learning, whatever is your innovation, you can amplify it to the rest of the organization. Okay, and if that learning, if that innovation that you have actually done is a good idea, then we have a pod, a set of SMEs actually mentoring it and taking that idea way forward and putting power behind it. So what happens is that when you see that some of your learnings and some of your innovations are appreciated by the organization, automatically there is a motivation to do more. So from these three or four angles, we have tried to keep learning in short spurts, accessible, very relevant, and it's absolutely relevant to the job that people are doing, and regularly, continuously motivated to contribute back to the learning ecosystem. So learning is not just one way. I can, as an SME, contribute back to the learning ecosystem, and learning is all around us. As I told you, right? There are hackathons and meetings and seminars, and you can create your own learning path. So it's not like somebody creates a learning path for you. You can create your own learning path, which means you're more committed to it. And of course, we recognize that Gen Z learns differently. So we have something called My Learning Reels, right? Which is just a 60 to 90 seconds, just like an Instagram reel, 60 to 90 seconds on a particular topic. So there are these we even have an app to create these reels. So when there are a lot of these reels, the more you're exposed to certain topics, then the interest is generated to actually go into more formal learning. Okay, so these are the various ways we have tried to make an associate surrounded by learning from all quarters.
That point where you mentioned that you are also giving a platform for employees to immediately use their learning in some live project, right?
Yes.
That I think is one of the key differentiators. Otherwise, you just learn and forget about it. You may never get an opportunity to use that
Correct.
learning.
Absolutely.
So,
Even
yeah.
with generative AI now, right? It's generative AI for us is not a bastion of people who are in the AI COE. Every associate in Cognizant has an exposure to generative AI in their own field. They could be HR. Okay, they have developed this interview bot. They could be in academy. They've used knowledge management enhanced by generative AI. They could be in pre-sales. They have used generative AI to create certain content which can be used in selling. So every part of our organization has leveraged generative AI as it's relevant for them. So democratizing the learning is what I'm talking about.
Right, right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, from learning, we now come to skills, right? What do I learn? What are the skills that I need to develop? Now, because technology is changing so rapidly, on the one hand, on the other hand, as a global organization, you must be spread out all over the world, right? So, how are you effectively identifying what are the new age skills that are required, especially in the context of Gen AI, right? And related to that question is this added importance to cross-functional skills.
Mm.
If there's anything that you're doing there. And also, if what is your talent strategy? On the one hand, for the employers, who are your practitioner, developers, that group of people, or the associates, as you refer to them, and also to the CXOs. So, what is the talent strategy for this? I know you touched upon it briefly in the earlier question, but if you can elaborate more.
Definitely. So I'll take it from the beginning, right? What's her strategy behind the impact of generative AI and the learning required to keep up with generative AI? So we did a study along with Cognizant and Oxford Economics. We did a study that actually went into 18,000 tasks, around 1,000 jobs, and tried to see what would be the impact, not just for our jobs as in the tech sector, but overall, what would be the impact of generative AI on all of these jobs and the tasks underlying in these jobs. And we really found out that in 3 to 4 years, 13 to 15% of organizations would have formally adopted generative AI. By that, I mean today everybody is experimenting, but in 3 to 4 years, around 13% of the companies would be actually using generative AI to run their processes, run their functions. And in 10 years, it could go as much as, say, 46%. Okay. And how we see that happening is in the next 3 years, let's say up to 26, there will be this experimentation and preparation. And then from 26 to 30, we see that there will be confident adoption, right? This tentative, experimentative, no, actually it'll come out of lab and people would confidently adopt generative AI in various parts of the organization. And 2030 onwards, for a half a decade, we see that it will be embedded in across the organization, right? In various functions, in sales and finance and manufacturing. So that's how we are seeing that generative AI is going to be adopted. Now, if this is the, and you can read more about the study on our website. It's open for public domain. But given that this is how we see generative AI being adopted, now we have to start getting ready for that. Now, how do we select or choose what we learn and what we propagate to our associates? Multi-pronged strategy. No single way. We're continuously learning. The first is, of course, we have SMEs who are on the lookout and continuously seeing what's happening. So we have this AI hub where all the AI talent across our company are collaborating, and we have something called the AI hub. It's got technology platform, it's got competency, it has got studios, it's got labs. Mainly, they have SMEs who are continuously researching into the field of AI and generative AI, and they let us know what could be the next big thing and what should be prioritized. The second biggest source for us is our partners, the hyperscalers, the niche partners. So we are continuously in touch with them, collaborating with them, and they keep informing us and educating us on the next big thing that's happening and what's the development. In fact, with many hyperscalers, we are jointly developing content. We are part of their alpha beta testing teams. So that is one big source for us to know what's the next big thing. And the very important source for us is our customers. We are continuously speaking with our customers. At the end of the day, we are doing all of this for our customers. So that conversation tells us what the customers are accepting as realistic ideas, and what the customers are apprehensive and willing to experiment, and what the customers don't want to risk at all today because the consequence is too huge. So this, while the first 2 or 3 gives us a lot of ideas, our conversations with the customers keeps it real so that we don't get carried away with every idea that's coming out. So these are some of the sources. We bring all of this together, and along with our C-suite leadership, we actually continuously prioritize. And with GenAI, it's like literally every month the priority is changing. And so we are at it very agile. And as far as the CXOs are concerned of our organization, I'll answer it in 2 parts, right? One is CXOs of our own organization. We are that way lucky because our C-suite, including our board, are technically very savvy. So they themselves are quite abreast of what's happening in the industry. They are continuously in conversation with partners. They are attending the various global and national leadership forums. So they are very much abreast of what's happening. In addition to that, as I mentioned before, we do have Gen AI program for various levels of leadership, C-suite leadership, the executive team, the executive leadership team, our director plus. At various levels of leadership, we have curated courses um, which they can continuously read up to be abreast of what's happening. So that's how we keep ensuring that we learn from our entire ecosystem. Our ecosystem helps us prioritize, and our leaders are also abreast of what's happening. But the second most important thing that I would want to touch up as a corollary to your question is C-level leaders of our clients, the boardroom of our clients. So we are in continuous conversation, and we have run many informative and educational session for C-suite members of our clients. We walked into boardrooms and we've been invited to share our thought leadership on this topic. So all around in every organization, unlike the earlier technologies where the leadership used to say, oh, this is good, they used to just call up the CI and say, why don't you implement this? Why don't we do an ERP? Why don't we move to the cloud? In generative AI, we are seeing a shift where the board, the C-suite leaders are very keen to know what their technology is, what its positive impact can be, what its potential consequences may be. So they are themselves very eager to learn. So that makes it much easier to knowledge share.
So you mentioned one nice phrase, which was that we are in times today where our business priorities are changing very, very often, right?
Yes.
It is one thing today, tomorrow it could be something else, and maybe a large part of it we see because of Gen AI, right? And its potential impact. So that brings me to the next question, which is to say, how can the leaders prepare their business for this kind of dynamic world, right? So, from a Gen AI angle, how are the traditional notions of leadership changing, and how can uh, leaders thrive in this kind of a dynamic world? What are you seeing in that space?
See, there is a fundamental shift in the sense that with generative AI, there are no guarantees of result. Okay, so we can never say that give me a machine learning program that will be 95% accurate. If somebody asks that, with today's technology development, that nobody can give that kind of assurance. So what that means is, as a leader, as a C-suite member, it's not a zero-sum game. I will have to be willing to experiment. As I said right in the beginning, this is a phase where we will have to experiment and start the adoption process, be agile and be responsive to all the changes that are happening, be open to new ideas that are coming from either the tech companies or the product companies. You need to keep your mind open to the potential. I don't generally use the word disruption because disruption sometimes sounds negative. I believe that it's an infinite potential. It's opening up a huge new world for us, right? So it's very important that the open mindedness to adopting these technologies and experimenting with it in a way, balancing it such that it doesn't affect the core of your business, but still experiment. And most important thing is, there could be failures. The important thing is to fail fast and recover very quickly, right? It's something like these children, right? Children, they fall down, but they seldom get hurt. They'll quickly dust themselves off and run again. So we need to have that mindset when we're adopting generative AI, right? We should be willing to, quickly recover from something that's not working, and, keep experimenting. At the same time, I would also be not doing justice if I don't call out that the ethical and the consequence side of it. Okay, it's important that at C-level they have a awareness, and they get a complete view of what's ethical, what's responsible AI, and what could be the consequences. Because at every country there are these laws and legislations and there is compliances. Those are also evolving. The laws, the compliances are also evolving. So at C level, it's very important to encourage the teams to be aware of this and responsibly start adopting generative AI. So to summarize, it will be keep an open mind, be very agile, be willing to fail, but fail fast and recover fast. And lastly, be aware and put the necessary guardrails so that we do it ethically and responsibly. And one last thing, if I may take the liberty to add, is it does give the organization more avenues to do social good with AI. In whatever business that we are, we can carve out a bit of our business's largest and do social good with AI. I think that aspect also corporates can examine. Governments are already examining how AI can be used for social good. Yeah. Corporates can do as well. So according to me, at a C level, these are some very simple, fundamental outlook that can possibly help.
And what about from the larger employee base side? How do you think can they, apart from learning and keeping themselves continuously uh, updated, what are some of the crucial measures to ensure that they remain resilient? Because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are delivering, right? The responsibility falls on them. And how do you want them to approach this new complex world, so what they call the new work, new world paradigm?
Absolutely, very relevant question, because Gen A can be very scary, right? And there are enough scaremongers also who are amplifying this scare. But the scare is also real, in the sense that 300, 400 years when we had industrial revolution, everything that your hands and feet were doing, the machine started doing. Now, what your brain was doing, AI is going to do. So from, if you look at it from that angle, um, the apprehensions that the employees and workforce in general are facing are very real. And as organizations, as governments, as we should be acknowledging that this apprehension is real, and we will have to put out measures in place to see how these apprehensions can be assuaged and how it can be managed. Because the reality is that some jobs are going to be replaced by AI. Okay, that is the reality. Maybe not overnight, but eventually. But does that mean that all jobs are going to go away? No. What the nature of jobs, the types of roles are definitely going to change, right? We, as much as AI replaces certain roles, it's also creating new roles. Today, we already know 8 to 10 roles which are created by AI, which were never there last year. We have a prompt engineer, we have an AI ethicist, we have AI pod leaders, we have human reinforced AI testing. So a whole new world has opened up in just 8 to 10 months. These roles didn't exist last year. So the important thing is to acknowledge that the nature of the job and roles are shifting. It's important to realize that AI is making the change, but without going in a panic mode or without, scaremongering ourselves. We need to see how we plan our own careers, what's left of it. I might have 10 years, somebody might have 40 years. So what's left of our career? How do we shape what skills we develop? How do we shape the career trajectory to work along with AI, to leverage AI to see how AI can make my job or my outcomes better. That is the important thing. So not talking about it is not a good idea. We have to just telling associates, hey, don't worry, nothing will happen. No, something will happen. But what is that something? How do we manage it? How do we prepare for it? And then how do we embrace it? And eventually, how do we ensure that it enriches us? That needs to be planned and implemented. That is the most important thing at this juncture, because these are, I just read it somewhere today, certain years are pivotal in our existence, right? There are very ordinary years and there are certain years which are very pivotal. These 3 4 years are pivotal, and how we pivot ourselves individually, ourselves collectively, is going to define our future. It's a large statement to make, but that is the truth. So
Right.
First thing is, yes, acknowledge that AI is going to transform things, and then actually see how individually and collectively we can navigate this change.
And just one question is, you mentioned the emergence of new types of job roles or skills, right? Prompt engineering, AI ethicist, all of those. One of the important things that I think that is required now is creating awareness about these job roles as well, right? Because it is, if
Absolutely.
I'm going to learn AI, if I have direction to what I should learn, should I be a prompt engineer? Should I focus on responsible AI? Should I, or is it ethics? It can give me directions and make my learning more effective. So,
Absolutely.
in your system or in your talent strategy, do you have a platform where people can explore these kind of
Absolutely.
emerging?
Absolutely, not just in our who are our associates. In fact, we are working with campuses to even talk with third year, fourth year engineering graduates, and start giving out this awareness in terms of the new roles that are emerging and how one can prepare ourselves for these new roles. And I think I mentioned about our studios. Our studios are places where actually in a safe space one can explore how this role evolves, right? Today, if you take any of these roles, we don't have a fixed JD. Correct. The JD, its job description itself is evolving. So in our studios, we have safe space to actually see how this nature of this job evolves. So for our own associates and for also the young population that's going to join the workforce in the next 2 to 3 years, we're definitely working to see. And every time we see a new role emerge, and let me tell you one thing, Diksha, I every month a new role gets added. It's that dynamic. Okay, every month, I mean, or even less. So every time we put the skill registry, as we call it, a new role gets added. Even we are a little curious. Oh, what does this person do? Okay, and not just in the technical world, right? Even if you look at lawyers, if you look at doctors, if you look at pharmacy companies, everywhere roles are getting added because of AI. Correct. So it's important that we recognize these roles, socialize these roles, and ensure that they get talked about. And let me promise you, in the Gen Z world, Diksha, they're really talked about. If you if you see even the Insta pages or LinkedIn profile of younger population, they're already claiming that they are AI ethicists. So it's more popular in their world, and more than we know, our next generation, as I would like to call them, are preparing themselves for this world.
Okay. So I think it would, what you're basically saying is that we should not assume that they don't know or they're not aware. They're far more aware,
They are.
but it is, yeah, yeah, yeah. Good
We
to
need to augment their awareness, and
uh,
we need to kindle their curiosity. And
curiosity.
I'm sure
Yes.
in next 20 years later, we would see a whole bunch of new roles that never existed.
Right, right, right. Right. So Poornima, I'm coming to the last portion, which is like a fun segment, if you will, something
Okay.
like a rapid fire, just to
Okay.
take the focus away from the business part of it and to show you the softer side of Poornima. That's okay. So
Thank you. Thank you.
very short the questions, very short point answers. So
Okay.
your mantra for work-life balance.
I'm still discovering it.
Okay. But any tips for others?
I work like this. There are certain phases in my life where work is very important. I'm doing something very critical at work. At that time, I focus mostly on work. There are other phases in my life where something important in my personal life is going on, where I take my complete focus there. I keep the work folks informed and focus on that.
Okay,
So
okay,
through my 30-year career journey, that's the way I have achieved balance rather than on a daily or weekly basis.
yes, got it. What is the most recent professional or personal challenge that you've overcome?
A challenge in a good way, in a personal challenge, I would say, but in a nice way, is that I got my daughter married. So
Okay,
that was a big
congratulations.
thank you so much, and that was it was very interesting, but something big and phenomenal to do, and that was I think a big one. Yeah.
Okay. And what frustrates you the most? What is your pet peeve?
My pet peeve, not many actually, but I don't really like people who are very cribby at work or anywhere else. I'd say especially at work, because I believe it's a free country, and if you're happy, be here. If not, go where you are happy. I believe that cribby negative energy very draining. Yeah.
And one book that you would recommend everyone to read, and why?
A book. Um, there is no particular book I would say, but I would say one thing. I would really encourage everybody to read, and that really increases your own vista. So there is no single book, but yeah, my favorite are few. Um, I like economics in my personal
Okay.
life. So I read a lot of books on economics. So misbehaving on irrational behavior of human beings and thinking that to economics is probably my favorite. But everybody should read whatever is their
Okay.
world. It could be comics, newspaper, but you should read.
Okay. Okay. And on diverse topics, I suppose.
Yes, and on diverse topics.
And one advice to, let's say, the Gen Zs on how to be resilient. That's my last question, I promise.
Be patient, right? Patience is a virtue. Okay, we live in an era where everything is instant, right? 10-minute grocery, 15-minute pizza, everything is instantaneous. So we tend to believe that everything is instantaneous. It's sometimes things have take its own time, right? So
Right.
have that patience and
Okay.
things work out.
Okay. So thanks, Poornima. But let me just summarize a few points that I've noted and which I think are good. I mean, important enough to repeat. So in this age of Gen AI, it is important to experiment, experience, and to evolve continuously. That's what you said. So the three E's probably. Uh, gets learned keeps changing, which is why it is important to keep upskilling yourself. That was the second message that I heard. Therefore, is no longer static and it's very, very dynamic, right?
Correct.
Take time, right? Both for the organization and also for the individuals, make time to learn. Organizations make learning accessible and make it relevant so that the content is not too outdated or too complicated, and probably find ways to motivate ourselves and each other for learning. And one
Correct.
important part of that for an organization is to try and give a platform for learners to very quickly apply that learning
Absolutely.
on some project or the other. It could be live or it could be experimental, but that opportunity needs to be made available.
Absolutely.
Uh, then I think you also mentioned about how you constantly talk to customers and partners.
Right.
Customers to understand what they need and therefore whether that particular technology is relevant to them or not, and to partners to keep ahead of existing technology and also to know what is likely
What's
to
to come?
happen tomorrow, right? And fail fast, recover fast. That's one of the common things that applies to practically everything.
Yeah,
And yeah, we need to continue to create awareness, not just about what to learn, but also about what are the emerging job roles.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's about
Absolutely.
it. I hope I've captured everything. But thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Poornima.
Thank you so
Great
much,
talking to you.
Diksha.
Thanks for your insights.
Thank you
And
so
have a
much.
great day. And
You too.
hope to keep in touch.
Definitely. Thank you. And thanks
Thank
to
you.
the entire NASCOM team for enabling the session. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much. Thank
Good
you.
day. Bye.